What is up, y'all? It is Jerry from Team Unco Studios, snuggled up here in the hills, in the cabin, ready to do another very basic MPC Beats tutorial for you all using the MPC Beats software and the Akai MPK Mini. All right, y'all? So today we're going to start finally getting into sampling and kind of how sampling works and the ins and outs of sampling. We're going to kind of mess with some samples, and the kind of end result of this section of sampling is going to be chopping up a sample, and we're going to be using the sample in different sections of kind of like our beat and stuff like that. I know it sounds confusing, but that's the reason why we have the tutorials, all right? So let's go ahead and start jumping over to the screen here and see what we got, okay? So if you take a look at my screen, you'll notice that I've just got kind of a little bit of, just information here going on. It's nothing, crazy, just some MIDI info basically. Okay, so what we're going to do first is we're going to actually get into explaining kind of what it is a sample, like what a sample is, right? A sample is just any song that you can think of, and just take a section of it, whether it be the intro, the chorus, the verse, whatever it happens to be, and just take a sample of that, right? That is kind of the overall definition of a sample, right? You could take any part of a song and make it a sample. For instance, the bass line or the guitar or the beat or whatever. You can take just a sound of something and make it a sample, meaning like a snare. Let's say you have you're at a buddy's house and you're listening to some recordings and he's got a snare that you really like the sound to. Well, you can sample that snare if he's got it in a digital form where you can use it on a MIDI grid, or even if he doesn't have it in that form, right? You can be able to sample that snare. Kind of the same way that we can take like a keyboard sound from something that we've heard of, or somebody else might have. And we can sample that also by using like key groups, right? And we kind of went over that in key groups. Kind of the same thing, but a little bit different, but the same concept, all right? So once again, if you get back to the screen here, you will notice I've got just this MIDI grid information that I got in here. So the first thing, as we want to do is give this, something to be able to be played to, right? So obviously, we have nothing in this program because you can see I've got nothing in these pads here, right? I've got none in my program, all right? So I'm going to open up my program here, and I'm going to go ahead and select my Lo-Fi ADSR Midnight Hour kit, okay, which I got from the Lo-Fi Producers collection here that comes with, I believe this comes with MPC Beats 2 or 1 of the two. But it's a really simple expansion pack, so we're going to use this one as the example for the tutorial, right? So I've got the ADSR Midnight Hour, and if you notice at the end it says it's 100 BPM and it's in an A minor, all right? So those things are important for later, but just remember it's 100 BPM in A minor, okay? So we're going to go ahead and load that kit, all right? And this is the little beat that we're kind of working with here, all right? So we've kind of got this little, let's go back here. There we go. Or not. All right, let's try this guy. Okay. Okay. All right, so you notice we kind of just got, a little kind of thing going there, and that sounds cool, that there's nothing wrong with that. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take a sample of something else, and we are going to listen to the sample, but then we're going to take pieces of the sample and fit it to this beat right here, okay? That's the overall goal of what this tutorial is about, all right? So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to solidify a couple of things. So thing number one is I'm going to solidify that my BPM, which I have right now, if you notice up at the top up here is 112, right? That my BPM is going to match up kind of with what I've got going on here in my ADSR kit. So it's at 100 BPM. So I'm going to go ahead and change that right now to 100. Okay, so, all right. So we got 100 BPM now. And now let's go ahead and listen to our this kit that we got. So that's pretty cool. It sounds good. I like what we got going on here. Let's see if we can go ahead and try to fit something to it, okay? So Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back over to where my lo-fi producers collection is, and I'm going to open up the program folder, and then in that folder there's a subfolder called the lo-fi, and then in that lo-fi is your kits. And in this case, I've got ADSR bedroom, I've got the midnight, I got slow down, some pluck, and I've got the ADSR touch. All right. So the reason why I'm reading these out loud is because you want to start being able to match some of these things to your samples in that expansion pack, right? What I mean by that is now if we go down to where our samples is, right? So I'm going to close this, right? So this is our main list. So if I go down to samples and open it up, and then I go to lo-fi again and open it up, and then I go down to my loops here, I'm going to see I've got all these different kind of loops that I got here, all right, that are just loops of stuff that are in these programmed kits, okay? So these loops here are different instruments that are in these kits right here, okay? So that's important to keep in mind. Now, the way I like to match things up, like I said, is by BPM. So because I've got 100 here, right, I would normally go down and look for something that says midnight hour, right? But if I come down to this list, you'll notice there's not really anything that says midnight or midnight hour, right? So they probably don't have any samples or loops for this particular kit. But if you notice, some of these other ones do. So the first thing I'm going to look for is what BPMs match up with my kit, right? So if I look down, I've got 163, 160, but boom, I notice this ADSR touch is 100. So I'm going to go ahead and now look down here and see what I have down here that says ADSR touch or something. So I notice these last couple ones say touch to them, and I've got a bass, pad, piano, and synth. So I'm probably thinking some like piano or something to this sample. So I'm going to say, you know what? Okay, my piano. So when I double touch this, it's going to load it into my sample pool here. Okay. So if you notice, I've got these kind of other menus that I have down here in my console now. All right. The menus that I have here are turned off and on by these little highlighted guys here. Okay. For the tutorial, you're going to need all these on. All right. So we want to make sure that we have all of these turned on right here. All right. Now, to my far right, I've got my sample pool. This is anything I click on here within my expansion packs is going to automatically load into my sample pool. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and go find where this ADSR, the piano is. So my ADSR piano is here. And then you'll notice there's a little speaker there. And I'm going to go ahead and press it and listen to the sample. Okay, so that doesn't sound bad. That sounds like a pretty cool sample. So I'm going to go ahead and say this is the sample that I'm going to make my chops with, right? So I'm going to take this sample and I'm going to chop it up and only use sections of the sample over my beat, all right? So there's a number of different ways you can do this. The way that we are going to do it is the way that I normally do it, because I like to try to keep my tracks nice and clean and know where everything is, so that when I export this to go mix it in my mixing DAW or wherever it's going to go, it's nice and organized. Organization is key when you are working with samples. All right. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to label track 1 here. Okay. So I'm going to double click. So I'm going to label that track drums, and I'm just labeling it drums to generalize the whole thing. This is like my drum track, right? Even though I've got some samples and stuff in there, maybe a couple of other things, I can separate that stuff out later. But for right now, I just want to know this is kind of my beat, my drum track. All right. So now I'm going to open up another one, and I'm going to call this, we'll just call it, let's just call it sample for right now. Okay. Just again, to just generalize, right? So what I'm going to do is now I'm going to go down and I'm going to load an empty program into track 2. Okay. So if I go to track view here, you'll notice now I've got an empty program, but my ADSR midnight hour kit is still up here. All right. On track 1. So let's go ahead and go back. I've got nothing here now. All right. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to bring my sample over here. All right, the whole sample. All right, so I'm going to come over into my sample pool, and I'm going to grab the ADSR touch piano right here, and I'm going to drag it over. Actually, you know what? You can even just drag it right to a pad. Let's just go ahead and drag it right to A1. All right, so boom, now it's on A1. Now we have got our ADSR here on this pad, okay? So this looks good. Everything looks good. Let's go ahead and try our sample. Now, how do I try the sample from here? Because I've now assigned it to a pad, all I have to do is hit my A1 pad over here on my MPK Mini, and I should be able to trigger that loop. So let's go ahead and hit it. And if you notice, there's my loop sample now. It's on A1 on my MPK Mini, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and stop this. And just a little tip too, in order to stop your sample from playing, you know, if you notice when I played, it extends. And when I hit my stop up here, I'm hitting it, but it's not stopping. The way that you stop it from playing is to double hit your stop button. 1, 2, and then it will stop. That's a really good key because it took me so long to figure that out, but it's a double stop to stop your sample from playing, all right? Super important when you're doing samples. It gets really annoying to have your sample be elongated, okay? So now that we've got our sample in here, if we go ahead now and go to sample edit, okay, which is our 4th one in our top toolbar here, you'll notice, boom, I've got my sample here. But when I play my beat, right, this does not play, right? Well, it doesn't play because it's a sample. And right now in here, this is kind of sampling like editing bay, you know, that we've got now in our console, okay? It's not really something that's designed for us to record the music yet. This is the stuff that's designed for us to sample this edit, all right? So that's kind of the gist of how we get our sample now into the editing bay, and where we're going to go from here is to start chopping this up and now start fitting it to our beat. All right. But that is going to be on the next video, y'all. Okay. I hope you guys got as much as you could from this video. I'm trying to really slow things down and kind of make this a, you know, maybe 2 videos so that you can get the idea of what samples are and how they work in MPC Beats. All right. So on the next video, we're going to start chopping this up, putting it in our, you know, on our MIDI grid, and start listening to the whole sample all together. All right. I hope this was helpful. We'll see you all in the next video. Peace and love from all of us at Team Unco Studios. Later.